Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
We played, and then Henry Rollins did a spoken word set in my living room.
What is happening? How's everybody doing? Thanks so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall. A show where I talk to people who are good at more than one thing. Let's just say it like that. The hyphenate in the name hyphenate comes from the term multi-hyphenate, to be somebody who's guitarist / producer / songwriter / photographer / painter / business owner. All of these types of things, you could be called Slash. I guess I could have named the show Slash, but I thought hyphenate worked. It's kind of felt more like a verb. I guess Slash is very much a verb, but I wanted something in that hyphenation kind of world. I thought that was kind of more fun, like the Hyphenated Man, Mike Watt record. And speaking of Mike Watt and bass, on today's show, I'm very honored to welcome my very good friend, Mr. Devin Sarno, another wizard of the four strings, the thunder broom, as Mr. Watt would call it, plucking the power lines. Devin Sarno is somebody who I've been very, very honored and humbled to call a friend for the last, 10, 15 years. But I originally saw him, and we get into this in the interview, when I was just a wee lad in high school, getting into experimental music, and he had a duo with Nels Cline, and I saw them perform at an in-store at a very small record shop in Hollywood on Friday the 13th, and it was this kind of like, mind-blowing, aggressive, ambient, spooky sort of noise that I think performance, the thing that just really kind of like, got me, shook me to my core, and was one of the many early influences of just kind of seeing a noise, proper, professional, highbrow capital A artists, working. And and I remember I bought the record. We talked about this in the thing. I had him sign it. I had Nell sign it. And I was so excited. And then it just kind of lived on my record player for years. I'd put it on in between, Sonic Youth or Fugazi or other things, but I just had this kind of creeping sound of buildings falling down or some slow rumble of a earthquake 2 states over that was somehow picked up and recorded and committed to vinyl. And so that was sort of the place that Nels Cline occupied in my mind for a lot of years. And then we would cross paths socially, at art openings, at shows, at concerts, at the different things over the years. And then we eventually played in a impromptu sort of group that another artist, Tim Biscup, put together for he and his brother's band, Big Butter. I think that was probably one of the more formal sort of times that Devin and I kind of got to play music together. And then we would go on. He was kind enough and gracious enough and generous enough to invite me to play music at several different events. And it's always awesome. It's always fun. It's always fun to get an email or text or call from people and asking, if I want to come play solo and get weird in an improvisational noise sort of world. And keeping up with our noise, what do we call it? Noise Artists Anonymous? NAA. I think the Devin Sarno definitely qualifies as one of us. I like this concept. I think it started off as a joke, but now I find it very fitting for many of the people I get a chance to talk to on the podcast. Maybe there's a subset or special, sort of underlying running theme of Noise Artists Anonymous. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Randy S. Randall or Randy's Randall. And you can also write the show that's hyphenate halftime at gmail.com. And Aaron Farley and I will be back on Monday to discuss this episode and probably a million other things that have nothing to do with this. But we're having a lot of fun. Hope you guys are having fun too. It's starting to warm up here. Summer is just around the corner. And I'm having fun doing this. I'm really glad I get to present all these fun talks with people I've known for a long time and maybe not everybody's super familiar with. Oh yeah, that being said, if you're curious and you're stoked on what Devin's talking about and the ideas that he's putting down there and you want to hear his music, definitely do yourself a favor and you can go to Devin, that's DEVIN Sarno, SARNO.bandcamp.com. He's got a million great releases up here. He documents everything, all the live shows, he records. He has a very prolific output. I mean, we talk about it, he ran a label for a long time. He's very, meticulous and archival. Rise Pumpkin Rise. That's available on Bandcamp. That's the Nels Cline, Devin Sarno collab 12-inch that I have. And that's also available on his Bandcamp. So if you're curious what sort of sounds were first blowing my mind in the mid to late 90s, here in the Southern California noise racket, you can go listen to that record there. You can go buy that from devin-sarno.bandcamp.com. He also has another great website that he talks about on there. It's just devinsarno.com. He's always taking photos. He is a stylish dressed man about town. You will see pictures of him up there. You can also follow him on the Instagrams and all the other socials. He's out there. He's doing rad stuff. And thanks so much, Devin, for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. Devin, thanks so much for jumping on the mics and joining on the pod.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. It was awesome.
I've been enjoying the podcast. It was an honor you asked.
Oh my God, you're too kind. You were one of the first guests to have the tile work, the artwork done before the record. So you were sweet. You were so nice to send me a long photo from like your knees to your head that I could use for the artwork.
Happy to help.
I've had such a time scouring the internet to find pictures, full length body photos of past guests. Poor Devin Williams, Devin with an O Williams.
Yeah.
The best picture I could find is him when he was 17, like drinking a big gulp. it was very low res as well, and so he wrote like, "Really, that's the best you got?" I'm like, "Sorry, man, this is the internet."
I probably prefer a picture of me at 17 at this point.
Right? Oh, it's so funny. Well, I appreciate you making the time and coming on. I know you have a busy schedule.
Oh no, dude, it's an honor.
Hey, man. So I recall, I'll start with myself and then I'll ask you questions, but first I'll give my own intro. I remember, I think you first came on my radar as a young teenage, noise fan. And I've told you this story, but I'll get it officially down on the record, at No Name Records, which was on Santa Monica Boulevard.
No Life. Yeah.
No Life, not No Name, No Life. Oh my God. And Santa Monica and La Brea, and you were performing with Nels Cline in a duo and promoting a release, Rise Pumpkin Rise. And I was blown away, and I was aware of Nels through his New Music Mondays and through his collaborations with Thurston Moore and Mike Watt.
Mm-hmm.
And I first saw you that evening, and you were nice enough to sign a record. The release. I think you and Nels both signed it, and it's so funny. All the years later when we would bump into each other again, and I was like, "You're the guy!" Oh my God, I love that. That was one of those early staples of like ambient kind of noise, records that I had and definitely obsessed over as a young person.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I remember that show pretty vividly.
It was a Friday the 13th show, right, where there was costumes involved and. Bob Bruno.
That might have been.
Yeah.
That part I don't remember.
Okay. I remember that part. There was definitely Bob dressed up in some kind of thing. Again, somebody that I would go on.
There you go. The weirdest part I don't remember.
Incredible. But yeah, let's go back to the beginning. So that was my beginning. But what's your beginning? Where do you come from, and what's your path to creativity? How'd you get to all this?
Well, LA, born and raised, Echo Park area. Wow. My mom is still in Echo Park. My dad's in Los Feliz. So we're, family's a long time staple in that part of the city.
Wow. And what did they do?
So, my grandparents had come over from Italy and originally landed in Chicago, where my dad was born, and then came to LA, mainly because the winters were just too brutal for my grandfather in Chicago. But he was a baker, and had come over from Italy to start a bakery, which he did in Chicago originally, and then out here in Los Angeles. He and my grandmother both ran it until they couldn't do it anymore.
Where was that original bakery in LA?
So, funnily, the original one was in Echo Park, where Masa restaurant is. That was originally the Sarno's Bakery.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, they moved over to Los Feliz on Vermont, where it still the neon sign is up on the building there at Prospect in Vermont.
I was going to ask. Yeah, I've seen that sign before. That was your grandparents' place? Wow.
Right.
Oh, my God. But what is in that building currently? There's just the sign remains, but not the business.
So now it's a restaurant that just opened like a year and a half ago. Mexican restaurant that's been getting great reviews. I haven't been there yet myself, but yeah.
Wow.
So they're
and the sign is the sign part of a historic preservation, or how does that work?
It is, yeah. I mean, my dad had sold the building a few years back, and the Neon Museum, which is based in Glendale, had reached out to me because they're on it. Those guys, they were aware that the building was changing hands, and had reached out asking if the sign was going to be preserved. And luckily, the current owners were happy to keep it and realized kind of the significance, the historical significance of it from a Neon's perspective. And I guess it is, it's part of they do a city tour where they go to different landmarks that have neon signs, and that the Sarno's building is a part of that. So.
Wow. What is that? What do you know what year that sign dates to?
It's a damn good question, and I don't really.
Okay. I'm imagining 50s or prior.
Yeah, it would have to have been somewhere in that range.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I've got some. You can't see it, but right in front of me, I have an old framed kind of promo card that my grandparents had done with the sign on it.
That is so cool. So yeah, when you say LA, you mean your roots are there. You're historically minted as part of the Sarno family tradition.
For better or for worse, yes.
That's incredible. Not many people in LA are from LA, and then if you are from LA, not actually from LA, and then if you are from LA, you don't have a neon sign. So take that.
There you go.
Yeah, you'd have to.
No, I do hear this all the time. Like, I don't know many people that are from LA.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
You'd have to go back to some kind of Mulholland or Doheny or something, I think, to get much more LA than that. Or further back to the indigenous First Nations tribes. I'm sure there's not a lot of neon, dating back to then.
No neon, sadly.
And what part of Italy do you know where they originated from?
Just outside of Naples. Bragigliano, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that horribly, but
that's amazing.
It's a pretty small village, and there actually is a town called Sarno.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
now
which I don't know a lot of the background of. I'm laughing because my wife and I had honeymooned there, and not funny timing, but there was a massive like mudslide or
Oh, no.
something that had happened in Sarno. So when we were there, the headlines in the paper was like Sarno destroyed.
Oh my God.
It's like, Jesus Christ.
That's a hell of a way to start off a honeymoon.
Yes.
Oh my God. And wait, tell me the name again. Where
my grandfather's from?
Yeah. It's just outside of Naples.
Yeah. Bragigliano.
Okay. I'm doing a quick search, but on my mom's side, we traced back her father's roots to a small village called Caserta, or the Caserta is the bigger town, but there's a smaller, village outside of there. And we did that with my brother and I took my mom, probably about 15 years ago to go drive through there. So,
oh, that's right.
We're within about an hour north of Naples. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Funny coincidence.
I know. I was just thinking, yeah, there's probably family.
We're probably related, Randy. Come on.
You go back that far, right? As somebody knew somebody.
Very well.
Amazing. So Echo Park, and then what brings you to kind of to music and art and that stuff growing up, in LA? What year we're talking, in the 70s, early 80s?
I'll probably credit my parents for that, and my uncle was an opera singer, and, there was always music was always around, and there was a love and appreciation of it. My mom and dad aren't musicians per se, but they're definitely, music lovers. And so, yeah, I have really fond, vivid memories as a kid of just like jazz constantly playing, and this was like Miles Electric era shit, like just pretty tripped out stuff. Was always pumping through my eardrums. So and my dad also experimented with he had like a reel-to-reel deck, and he'd do sound experiments and shit like that when I was a kid. And so I've always had kind of like that thing going on, in the back of my
What do you mean?
mind.
What kind of experiments? What?
Just, I think the technology was pretty new at the time, and my dad's always way into tech and, new things in that world. And he had just picked up a reel-to-reel deck and started screwing around with it, trying to recording me and my sister and manipulating our voices and, very Joseph Hammer-ish stuff for those who know Joseph, and LAFMS kind of stuff. I mean, he was doing some trippy shit. I talked about this on Mike Watt's podcast. I found some of those tapes a few years back and digitized them and added some. I recorded over them too, and we kind of did a bit of a duet, if you will, with some of that stuff. It was really fun to mess around with them.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I just, and they always, if I ever had any inkling of anything art related, they were always like right there supporting it, which has always meant the world to me. And I definitely know how lucky I am in that regard. If I ever, before music, I had gotten into writing, poetry, spoken word, stuff like that. And, I'd had an interest in doing a chapbook at one point. My dad was like all over it and helped me get it printed and distributed and stuff like that. And, after that, when I had showed a little bit of interest in music, they were right there, like, getting me an instrument and like, just encouraging it, so
that's incredible.
Yeah, again, I'm really incredibly lucky to have had that support.
Yeah. Are any siblings, or okay.
Sister and an older sister, 3 years older, and a younger brother is 11 years younger.
Wow. And same, were they also following creative pursuits, or did they go other directions?
Yeah, for sure. My sister did acting, and my brother is an attorney, but loves music and plays guitar and sings. And
it's always good to have a lawyer in the family.
It is, yes. I've got a lot of them surrounded.
Oh my God! I just want to check. When you talk, are you seeing your levels go up and down under your thing on the side? Do you see where you're?
Yes.
You are? Okay. All right. Because I'm not seeing him go. Sorry, I'll cut this out. I just wanted to make sure before we got too far down. That's incredible. So then where does, is it, are you first introduced to the punk scene? I mean, what is your sort of like underground music? I don't know if it was even identified as punk, or was it kind of, what was your entree into that world?
That was really it. I would say, like, I before punk, I'd say, like, probably for me, early 80s was when I really, like, obsessively got into music. I had like a couple records before then, and I listened to my sister's Beatles records and different things she was into, but really it was like that movement that got me going, and really got me interested in wanting to try it myself and, pick up an instrument, and pestered my parents to let me go to shows, and check out live stuff. And my dad was cool enough to bring me to, I think the first punk show I saw was X, and he brought me to that one.
Where was that?
Brought me to a Bad Brains show.
Where was that show? Do you remember?
The X show was at the Roxy. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And Bad Brains, where was that one? That would have been insane.
I think that one was Devonshire Downs, I think.
Okay. I don't know that.
I remember right.
What was that?
Yeah.
What was Devonshire Downs?
It was like in Northridge or something. Somewhere in the bowels of the valley. Yeah.
Now, what was the great country club there, or not country as in not fancy country club, but like country western club that would do like punk shows?
The Palomino.
The Palomino. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw a few shows at the Palomino. Yeah, I mean,
Live
he'd
Totem
taken
Pole
me to
was recorded there, right?
I think so.
Record.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And then all the Any Which Way But Loose, the Clint Eastwood films were, and what was the other one? The not Smoking the Bandit, but the other one they did after that. It's all filmed there. The big fight fight scene there where they get punched through
funny.
No, not Smokey? What's Stroker Ace, where he's like the fall guy, right? Or is like the stuntman.
Funny.
Yeah. Anyway, same stuntman director, Hal whatever.
Did not know that.
Anyway, yeah, Palomino. Sorry, go down. But
Sun Ra played the Palomino, or he used to play there quite a bit.
Who?
I remember it. Sun Ra.
Oh, really? Incredible. Right, but it was kind of a shit kicker, sort of like country, like country bar, right? That's incredible.
Yes.
But they would do kind of out there shows as well as punk shows. Amazing. Yeah. So you're how are you learning about this music? I mean, what is it? How does it get to you? Is it zines? Is it record stores? It's all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably credit my good friend Gary, who still like turns me on to shit. Like, he was really my conduit to a lot of that stuff. Turned me on to so many bands. And then from there, I mean, in those days it was really like fanzines and word of mouth,
Yeah. I mean, this is all pre-internet, right? So this is that world. For sure. I think I'm more fascinated as time goes on, just the sort of the proliferation of culture, or that sort of, stuff that, is later becomes canonized. But at the time is probably about as far away from that as you can imagine, right? It's literally wheat paste and paper and Xerox machines and Sharpies.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, thank God for fanzines, because that's really like reading interviews with bands and hearing who they liked, who they were talking about. And you just kind of go down those rabbit holes as best you could without having access to the internet. It wasn't easy. You'd have to do some serious digging to find stuff.
But there was the kind of made the reward all that sweeter too. Once you found something that was awesome, was a real nugget. Like you had searched and mined and scraped and probably listened to 10 other bands that sucked to find at least one, or 100 bands that sucked. I think exactly. There's something interesting too now, just from an archivist perspective. I think where my generation, or when kind of as the no age band was getting attention, so much of it was done online, some blogs, some other, this kind of stuff. But I don't think it's the writing and the sort of the reporting, the writing, or, music journalism of the time of the early aughts isn't going to be as canonized, or not necessarily canonized, but or just remembered, even in the sense that it was all digital. And I think it's true. It even exists now more so. I think even the hard copy, the fact that so much of that early punk stuff was on paper, that stuff's paper's not going to outlive the internet, which sounded so funny at the time. I'm sure, it was like, oh, this will be on the internet forever. And you see the demise of websites and these kinds of things, and the folding in of, just storage spaces and hard drive space that just no one wants to keep the stuff around on a server somewhere. So it's, there's a different kind of way of what will be remembered. I think the zines ultimately will outlive us all.
As they should.
Yeah.
I still have box loads of them. Still collect them.
Amazing.
Obsessed.
So then going and as a fan, then at what point do you start to perform or start to write? You say was your first instrument a bass from your parents, or where did you first go?
Pretty much. I mean, I started with guitar, but not for long. I just the fingering was too difficult, and I was too impatient. It was like the lunkhead in me was like, "Whoa, bass has fewer strings, so that's going to be easier." And in some respects, it was just to kind of get going, Yeah. But I ended up really liking the bass, its place in, the whole equation of a band, and it just it stuck.
You always need.
But I guess first band was high school.
What was that band called?
Dashboard Saints.
Ooh. Sounds good. Are there recordings of that band?
Yeah, we have some recordings, not released, but they exist.
That's cool.
And our singer, Cesar Padilla, who's he did a great book called Ripped. He was really proactive and had gotten us a show at the Café de Grand, which we were too young to be in. I don't know how he finagled it, but he did. So I know we played the show and got booted out of there, but that was the first show. And then we did, a couple parties. We did my 16th birthday party, which we played, and then Henry Rollins did a spoken word set in my living room.
Oh my God. That's incredible. How did that happen? Had you met him through going to shows, or what?
It's through going to shows. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mentioned my friend Gary. He was, we had to go to shows together all the time. And he, I think, was the first one to kind of make contact with Gary, and he had introduced me, and we're still friends. But we just asked on a whim, and he was cool enough to do it.
That's incredible.
And as I say, I had started doing before music, I started doing writing and spoken word, so that was still at that time was still a big part of me. I had a lot of love for it, so it was kind of important to me to have that aspect be a part of that night.
That's so cool. And I'm sure Henry too was probably early in that part of his career where he was probably looking for more time, more experience to do it. And so why not? Mm-hmm. Why not a 16-year-old's birthday party in the living room? Right. Just as good as a coffee shop or anywhere else he would do it at that time. That's amazing.
Nice. He's the best.
Amazing. And then had you seen Black Flag at that point, or what was that like? What was your first Black Flag show?
A bunch. God, the first one, I don't remember, honestly. Right. I should, and I don't. But had seen them so many times.
Even before Henry had joined?
No.
Oh, okay. Not until after then.
The Henry era. Yeah. I was an SST head. So, I mean, all those bands and shows I was just obsessed with. Saccharine, Minutemen, Black Flag, all of them,
Yeah, I mean they were such a good label for that too, of just really cross promoting, other band shows. Like you did a flyer for one show, and then at the bottom would have also go see these 10 other shows. like also playing
Yeah.
this month. So no space on a flyer was lost. I imagine I chalk that up to a lot of Chuck, just figuring, hey, if we're going to do it, might as well do it right.
100%.
Don't waste any space on this flyer. We can fit a few more things in there. Get a couple more catalogs in each release.
Right.
That's amazing. So after that band, or what happens next? What's on the journey from Dashboard Saints?
Yeah. So then, I went to Loyola High School. Those, my friends from Loyola we were in Dashboard Saints together, and from Loyola High, I went to Loyola Marymount, mainly because of KXLU. Much to my parents' dismay, I'm sure, was more interested in being involved in the radio station than anything else. But so then my next band project came out of LMU. Some guys there that I had met had a band called Junkyard. And David Yu, I don't know if you know David Yuskevich, but he had a long standing show on KXLU, and also is the singer in Distorted Pony, and they're still going.
Sorry to interrupt, but is this the Brian Baker Junkyard?
No.
Different Junkyard. Okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah. This is the LMU Junkyard.
Got it. Okay. All right.
So David and I became pretty close friends, and kind of at that same time, he was starting Distorted Pony as an offshoot. I played with them a couple shows, just like playing floor tom. So then like Junkyard, I think what had happened was David wanted to just concentrate on Distorted Pony, so he left Junkyard, and me and Chuck, the singer, were looking for a new guitar player, and Tom Grimley was also a student at LMU, and we were aware of Tom and had asked him if he wanted to try out, and he did, and was an incredible guitarist, obviously not at all a fit for the Junkyard thing, but I was just like jaw dropped when I heard him play, and knew immediately that I wanted to pursue playing with him, even if it wasn't Junkyard. So the Junkyard just fell apart, and Tom and I kind of got together, and those were the early beginnings of the band that we had for a long time called Waldo the Dog-Faced Boy. And, from there, obviously had started our label that we did for a bunch of years. And, Tom went on to start his recording studio, Poop Alley. And so, that all just kind of came out of those LMU years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, Tom Grimley and Poop Alley, that jumps to mind, the early Beck recordings. For some reason, that's sort of where I think I first came on my radar, some early Beck, pre-Loser or would come out post, Mellow Gold, but early stuff that was recorded there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Beck, with Waldo shows, I mean, we knew Beck, and, he'd oftentimes would just sort of show up and jump up on stage at, Waldo show before we go on and do a set and stuff like that. So, he and Tom had known each other and became pretty tight.
Wow.
And ended up working together on quite a few things.
It's off tangent. Would you have called out that Beck would have the success he would later go on to have in those early days? Or did he just seem like everyone else in the group? Or was there something that did stand out about him?
Oh, he definitely stood out. I mean, I think anytime somebody explodes like that, I mean, Nirvana, you could throw in the same, bucket of like, you kind of know that there's something there, but that it explodes to that degree is always a bit of a whoa, Right. It's just right time, right place. It all just fucking, coalesced. But
the magic of it. And then,
obvious the guy was like super talented and charismatic and smart.
but at that age, I'm always so curious too, you know, I mean, because you see people come and go, or you see a lot of, you know, musicians that go, oh, they're great. And then nothing happens, you know, which is probably more common than somebody becoming a international tastemaker superstar of that
right.
within a short window of time. You know, it's always, like you said, time and place. I think Los Angeles.
Yeah, because that Silver Lake scene was just starting to bubble, you know. So it's like, you obviously, if you were in that scene, you knew, like, okay, well, something's going on here. This is kind of getting a bit more notoriety than normal.
And post Nirvana too, there was a whole kind of thing there. Did you cross paths with those, with the Nirvana camp or whole camp at Jabberjaw or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've crossed paths with Courtney, but more through my day job.
Oh, okay.
Part of my life.
Sure.
Because I used to work with the Smashing Pumpkins, and she and Billy were together during, you know, part of the time that I worked with the Pumpkins. So
got it. But Jabberjaw and that sort of scene, was that like parallel to what you know you were doing, but not really the same scene?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Waldo played and Jabberjaw, and I played solo Jabberjaw and played with Nels there and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it's definitely, you know, kind of going from like late 80s into early 90s. There was definitely something in LA that was changing. It was kind of the post, like, you know, coming from SST and punk, then, you know, into something different. How do you sort of characterize that time, or what was that like for you as you experienced it?
Oh, amazing. I mean, it just, you're tripping over talented people, you know. It's just like, you know, band after band after band of inspiring musicians and humans. And it was just like such a special time, you know. It felt like decent places to play, you know, like there were opportunities to put shows on, and it didn't necessarily feel like a struggle. It felt like there was a lot of like-minded people working together and creating something pretty cool, and a lot of support I found, you know. I mean, that really, like, the label that Tom and I did was kind of indicative of that. You know, it was important for us to have something that just supported our friends and the scene and one another, and that was really what Win was all about, honestly. I mean, if you look at the records and who played on the records, it was all just like this incestuous thing by design. You know, it should be that way.
Yeah. What was your experience like running the label? I mean, was it something that was more of a labor of love, or did it seem as though, you know, what it was about kind of supporting friends and supporting a particular scene? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a labor of love. You know, as time went on, you know, it became a little bit, I wouldn't even say it became a business, because we were so, you know, small scale, but we did get really good distribution towards the end of things. There was a distributor up in Oregon called Nail, and that kind of changed everything for us, because, you know, we got like a P&D deal with them. And we were probably stupid in how we approached it. It was just like, okay, now let's put out 50 fucking records, you know? So by the end of things, my garage was just like, you know, busting at the seams with unsold records, and, you know, Nail asking to be reimbursed for stuff. It's like, oh shit.
Oh, I didn't know where something.
Didn't think about that part. Yeah, but, you know, I reflected on it quite a bit recently, just because it was amazing and I loved every minute of it. But it would have been so different had we had done it now, you know, because the internet was just starting to be a thing. You know, it really wasn't for 90% of the time we did the label, and it was just fucking hard, you know. There weren't digital releases the way there are now. There wasn't Bandcamp, you know, it was us pressing records, and Tom did the recording part, and my part was the, you know, the semi unfun part of, you know, packaging up hundreds of records and mailing them out and doing the promo and the press and that end of things. And it can be exhausting. It was really just me kind of doing it at night after my job, so it was a job in itself. So as much as I loved it, it just became, at the end of it all, it just became super exhausting and a little bit hard to maintain,
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the part, you don't really hear about as much, just all the legwork that goes into that. And then if you're doing anything challenging or anything kind of outside of the, greater selling norm, it's really, you have to find your niche and your people, but the numbers aren't always favorable or in your favor as a label for that kind of stuff.
No, and we were doing pretty left of center stuff, so it's very micro scene of people that appreciated it. So it was hard. But, a lot of people that we worked with went on to have really successful careers, as they should, I mean, I feel proud of what we did and the people that we worked with, and
yeah, I mean, it's all part of the archive, like we said, kind of in the same vein as fanzines. I think the small kind of micro labels sort of exist in that same space to sort of document what has existed in those places.
Yeah.
And again,
I'll say again, I mean, it meant the world to me, all the experiences and the friendships and the camaraderie and just the pride and the quality of work that was put out. Like, and a lot of that, I mean, clearly the bands, but a lot too was Tom and just like how he approached recordings and a lot of what he brought to some of those records. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's incredible. And then from there, what happens next? Where do you go post Win Records, or what happens?
So, all along the way with Waldo, running alongside of it, I had started doing some solo stuff, and not really intentionally. It just sort of happened. I was just, kind of messing around. I was still figuring bass out and what my voice was on the instrument. And, so I had a early incarnation of my solo stuff was called Crib. And so I was kind of doing that simultaneously. And, a lot of people were super cool and like offering me shows and this and that. So I'd be doing that as well, and when Waldo stopped, I just kind of put my attention into, the solo project. And that was pretty much my main musical pursuit it's frankly still is,
yeah,
since then.
And then when I catch up with you there of that Rise Pumpkin Rise record with Nels Klein, tell me a little bit about that as a duo, or how did you meet Nels and what was your sort of experience like playing with him?
Well, I think we had met through his, he did a concert series every Monday. I think it was every Monday or maybe once a month. I don't remember, but at the Alligator Lounge on the West Side, incredible shows, as you'd imagine. Nels booking them. So I'd go to those like every Monday. In the same way I met Rollins, it was just like from seeing somebody every fucking show that you kind of like start talking to one another. And I don't really remember how it happened that we ended up jamming together, but we did. And at one point, and certainly blew my mind, playing with that guy. So I probably was persistent in, hey, let's do that again. And yeah, it just it ended up kind of turning into a bit of a project between the two of us. I guess we did 3 records together and a lot of live shows. Went up the coast once and did shows. We went on the East Coast and did some shows together. And I honestly, like Randy, I'd put you in the same sort of category for me of like there's like a handful of people that I played with that just, I don't know, it just kind of effortlessly works, and inspires me. And Nels was certainly one of those people, and probably the first. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Tom was the first, really, like, it's just like blows my mind, and Nels and yourself, and it's just. Yeah, I feel very lucky that I've had some of those opportunities with people,
Well, you're far too kind. I don't belong anywhere near Nels Klein.
You absolutely do. You really do, man. I mean, like, it's playing with you. Like, it's funny. Like, there's been a few. Like I said, there's sort of like a handful of instances over the years where I've been, in ensembles or playing with, whatever, like you and I, first played together through Big Butter.
Oh yeah.
Project, and in a similar way, like I'll sort of like key in on somebody for whatever reason. And it's just like, I was aware of you certainly and had seen No Age and whatnot, but like actually playing with you was just like, I was just like, I gotta do something with Randy, like duo. And Nels was that way. Tom was that way. Yourself, and I have a current project I'm doing with Angela Wilson, and that was the same. Joe Biza. Those are probably like the ones for me that just like they just kind of clicked. They just worked. It was, I didn't have to like think about it. It just kind of happened, and felt right.
I mean, I totally know what you mean. I mean, that was definitely my experience as well, where it's that kind of feeling of when you play with somebody and it's like, oh yeah, then, you can get lost in it and it's fun and organic. And one of my favorite things in an improvised, sort of experimental setting is with the point where you lose who's doing what. Kind of feeling like, I don't know, am I making that sound or something sounding really cool here? And you're kind of in a repetitive sort of meditative state. And it's almost, and it doesn't matter. I think there is no ego at that point. It's just all the sound is kind of happening and being created and you're almost moving outside of that conscious space, and everyone's just kind of adding to this stew of sound. And you don't really have, or for me, at least I don't really have a grasp on where it is, but I like it that way. If I can really get lost in a moment, I mean, there's something so sort of cathartic and euphoric about that in a project. And when that happens, and it doesn't happen often, but when that happens, it's always something to kind of cherish and go, that was cool. Again, like you said, you're like, I'm going to do that again. That's if I can do it once, you can do it again.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
You took the words out of my mouth, but yeah, it's hard for me to articulate it, but yeah, you said it perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny one because I've talked to other musicians and, I've been in a lot of different projects, but it's like, if that's not happening or if that's not a goal, if you've never experienced that, there really is no way to really sort of put it into words. You know what I mean? It is something, akin to like, I don't know. I think meditation, or that sort of that joyful, disembodied bliss of some type of, it would be put, akin to some type of religious sort of like freedom. It's about the closest I could put it to. And if experiencing that through sound is so special. And I think it's in the same sort of way, even as an audience, I've been able to sort of experience that as well. And just have that sort of, just movement, move through a piece of music and time with an artist, even if I'm not playing. But in my head, if someone's the kind of artists in that experimental noise world I really like, there's enough space for you as the listener to sort of involve yourself creatively in your own head. Like you're playing along or you're counting, you have your own count or your own sort of like tonal perception of what's happening is what you're hearing is what you're not hearing, and your brain starts to fill in colors and starts to you're kind of holding a space for people to sort of bring to it what they have, whatever their experience is with the music. And I think there's something really fun about that.
That's exactly right.
It's hilarious. There's been a theme, and I imagine this theme will continue to grow through this podcast, but who was I talking to? I was talking to Danny Perez, which may or may, I don't know when the episodes are coming out, but we were just, the the idea of just, admitting that being a noise artist is something of a addiction, or it's this kind of thing. I was speaking to this incredible musician, LG from this great band, Thelma and the Sleaze. And at the end, she knew nothing about me, which was great. I like interviewing friends who I've known a long time and people I've just met or people I'm just fans of. I don't need any kind of I don't need people to know anything about me to have a great conversation. But I think at the end, LG, we were talking and I was sheepishly saying, "Oh, I'm kind of a noise artist. I kind of do this noise thing." She's like, "Well, are you or aren't you? Do you or don't you? Like, just admit it." Like, and it reminded me very, very much of, kind of 12-step tradition of like, okay, my name is Randy Randall and I'm a noise artist. And then I've been building on that theme, I think, through several interviews now. And it's this kind of funny way of like, I spend a lot of money on equipment and I get into small groups of, I don't make any money as a noise artist. It mostly just costs me money and time away from my family. And I go to small rooms, usually in dirty, weird, kind of dangerous places, and just kind of sit in the dark with other weirdos for, a few hours at a time, as much as I can, as often as I can. I would love to do this. So there's something that
you've just encapsulated my life.
Right. So yeah, I think if anything, if the Hyphenate podcast can kind of, introduce a new disease or addiction into the larger lexicon of mental health issues, I think being a noise artist or a fan of noise arts, I think could be what is it, the DSM? What do you go with the major, the big book of problems?
I just try not to think about it.
That's what an addict would say, right? That's what somebody with a problem would say. Yeah. I don't know. It's only a problem if it's a problem. It's a self-diagnosed disease.
Let's not think about the reasons why. We're just...
It is, but yeah, I feel like you could probably write up a pretty good description. Have too many pedals, wears ill-fitting clothes. Like cheap clothes with expensive shoes, and the pedal board.
Shoes are important, dude.
Yeah, the pedal board is worth more than their entire closet, and
right.
And the record collection is worth more than their car. Or something like that, maybe, or more money spent. Whether it's actually worth that, more money was paid for the record than was paid for the car. Yeah, I think it's nice. Every interview, I'm beginning to fill in the lines of what this noise, what it means, the psychological profile of a noise artist. But it really is.
When you figure it out, let me know.
Yeah, but I mean, it really is. It's that kind of thing. It's hard to explain. It's hard to know. It's hard to explain to other people. And it's like, you do this voluntarily. You just go listen to weird music. Like, yeah.
Like, what the fuck is the matter with you?
We played feedback for 45 minutes. Like, that's great. But I'm going next week. I paid $5 for it. I insisted to pay $5. I could have got it for free, but I wanted to pay.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
That's why, like my work, I like rarely talk about what the fuck I do because I don't even know how to describe it. Or, it's like, there's probably just get blank stares. It's like, why are you doing that?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I like punk as a term. I'll often be outed as a guitarist or as a musician, and then people want to know. I've tried to stop carrying guitars into airports because it really just is embarrassing. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassing process. It's gone on for decades, where I have to talk to TSA or random people about what I do, and so I usually just say punk. I'm a punk artist, and then that'll usually. You can. There's
a whole other line that TSA puts you in then. Right.
Well, no. At least it usually stops the conversation if somebody's not a fan of punk, which is great. That's the lowest. That's a high bar it's a low bar to pass through. Like, if punk offends you, great. We don't need to talk any further. Or they say, oh yeah, I like Blink 182, or I like, I've heard Fall Out Boy. I'm like, great. There we go. We'll start on that.
That's crazy.
We'll have
Me
that conversation.
Too.
Yeah, we can do that conversation. Or they'll say, this happened once. Where was it? Was the cable installer. The guy was coming to help us install the cable at the house years ago.
Oh, this is going to be good.
And I said punk, and he said okay, and I was and then he's like and then he said, I grew up going to see Black Flag in the 80s. I would see Black Flag whenever they played in the Valley, and I was like, this is great. I want to talk to you. Like, but just by saying the word punk, I can like it filters a lot of conversations. I'm like, this guy's rad.
Right.
Yes. What do we
exactly?
Yeah. What records did you see? What lineups? Who did you go see? And but yeah, so punk was always my kind of like first filter. And then I just had a conversation with another father at a children's get together, and I described a band as being post punk, and he's like, well, what does that mean? Like, isn't everything like, what is, and I'm like, well, I was like why? And I knew he played music somewhat. I wasn't familiar exactly with the genre he plays, but I knew he was a musician. I was like, well, like Wire or Joy Division, something like that. And he's like, oh, isn't that just punk? Or you mean just like punk music? I was like, well, no, and I thought, I was like, well, from Sex Pistols to PIL, like that's your punk, post-punk division. He's like, well, what's, and then he asked me, well, what's pop punk? I'm like, Descendants. Boom, bop, bop, boom, bop, and then it's like, he kind of looked at me. I was like, I don't know, man. And then I was like, I can't help you. I can't. I didn't make up these terms. These are terms were given to me.
What do you want from me?
I'm sorry. If you don't know punk to post punk to pop punk, I don't know. I didn't make these things up. There's probably a better description. There's probably a better way to do that, but I didn't. I'm just using the language that was given to me as a music fan, as a nerd. I can't take you down Howard Devoto's, discography and explain to you what the man did on every magazine record. Anyway, so speaking of your day job, I mean, do you talk about, with your day job and noise job, like, do you speak on that, or do you talk to that in vague, broad terms, or is there a sense that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a huge part of my life. I have worked at major record labels since '80. I started in '89 at Virgin Records. And from there, I went to a label called The Work Group, which was through Sony. It was a little sort of boutique.
Is Warp Records?
Art label. Pardon me?
Is that Warp Records?
Work.
Oh,
Sorry.
Work. Okay.
Work.
Okay.
Yeah. And was there for a few years, and then was freelance for a couple of years, and then went over to Warner Brothers, now Warner Records, and have been there since, for about 20 plus years now. And all that time, working in music video. So basically working with artists at the label, in putting their visuals together. So in these days, that's getting pretty splintered and, with short form content and whatnot, but it's not just about obviously music videos anymore. It's all the ancillary content. So, but yeah, I mean, that's been clearly a huge part of my life. And, I certainly feel lucky that I'm able to be around music kind of no matter what I'm doing. It's somewhat different sides of the coin, but I'm still around some really inspiring people and generally having fun doing it. So,
I mean, was there ever a punk sort of internal conflict or crisis of faith sort of idea between, punk and experimental roots and sort of this other music, or how did you come to that?
Maybe, but self-imposed. No one's ever made me feel that way. I maybe personally, not anymore, but maybe in the beginning I felt a little like, oh, is it, am I a sellout or this or that, but, but I don't know.
But if one thing supports the other thing, I mean, it's funny. It can be a double-edged sword or a benefit for both. It depends which way you look at it. Glass half full, glass half empty. If you're able to take major label money into your own life and make and support cool artists and put out, records, through that, or support, other arts. It's
100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it did. It funded Win Records for as long as it did,
Yeah.
And it's continued to fund any sort of side pursuit that I do.
And what is?
And I'll say too, I've been super lucky that the people the bosses that I've had have always been incredibly supportive of anything that I do on the side, like they could give a shit, so that helps.
That's the best part. That's the best part of it. And then,
Yeah.
and then video. I mean, where did you come to video? Were you making music videos, or were you working on music videos? How did music videos?
No, I truly, I fell into it. I had just graduated college, and like all of us was looking for, okay, well, what's my next move? And knew that I wanted to, well, in a perfect world, if I'm going to work, I would want it to be somehow associated with music, So I'd gotten an internship at Virgin. My cousin was working there at the time, and she was able to get me an internship, and I just like bounced around all the different departments. Virgin at that time was really, it was just starting, so it was pretty small. I think there was, whatever, 30 people or something at the label. And, so I was able to really kind of get a good one-on-one understanding of how the different departments worked, and realized that I didn't like most of it. I didn't want to do publicity. I didn't want to do promotion. I didn't want to do radio. And in '89, like video was really just like starting to explode if it hadn't already exploded. So the video department ended up needing the most amount of help. So I really, truly fell into it. But it was the perfect place for me because, it's kind of its own little thing, it's one of the creative parts of the label, and it tends to be something that artists really have the most fun with, because obviously they can stretch their creativity with doing visuals, and they're always like super excited about it. So it's kind of a nice place to be. Plus I've been able to meet like, the film community. So, I have kind of hands in both worlds, film and music right now, which is super cool.
And also in that sort of way of being able to have an understanding of early talent or what people are doing experimentally or as directors or new artists in a visual medium, I imagine you probably can be supportive or fundamental in some directors' journeys as well through that.
That's the aspect that I enjoy the most, is being able to find new talent and give people chances, at doing videos. And that's always been the primary thing that's kept me doing it. Is I love that part of it, and I'll say again, like my boss, he's since retired, but a guy that I worked for most of my career, is just so exceptionally creative and genre pushing and experimental. And so I feel like I learned from the best, and he fostered that way of thinking, and also was just so supportive of directors. So yeah, I feel like I had just an incredible mentor in him, and my cousin also, who I've been blessed to be able to work with for all these years. And she also is in video, and just learning from the two of them and seeing how they just always would take chances, and try to do like, they did, some of the landmark music videos, like the Aha video or Sledgehammer or whatever the fuck, just like all the fuck, the craziest fucking shit they pretty much had their hands on, so those are the people I learned from.
And music videos, especially from that time, from like, from the late 80s through the early 90s and the early aughts, it was really, like you said, a place to experiment. And I think, it makes sense kind of looking at, your background and thinking out of the box or more left field creative pursuits, that even if the artist themselves is relatively middle of the road, the music video is the opportunity to it was sort of there was a precedent there to sort of express yourself and to go further afield than maybe you normally would, in the sense that there was that safe space for expression and cutting through the noise of all the other stuff going on out there. You'd want something that's maybe looked a little bit different. So if you could empower a new, younger, creative voice in that sort of world, or, directors that would go on to maybe even do something more straightforward later in their career, like the music video, cutting your teeth, the wild, the better in a lot of regards. That's sort of always been the purview, or at least it was, sort of the part of the mission statement of early music video directors, to catch people's attention.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I've been lucky too. The artists that I've been able to, a lot of the artists I've been able to work with, want to push the envelope. From My Chemical Romance, the Chili Peppers, Flaming Lips, Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, Linkin Park. All these guys have embraced experimenting and trying different things, and so
you got to kind of be that
10 times more fun,
that conduit to trying something different, or introducing something to a highly creative environment, and like, well, what if we went this way? What if we went that way? People working at sort of the top of their craft, and you can kind of work at that level. You have access to, like, to whisper in their ear, like, look at this artist, look at that, look at this director, look at that director. What kind of stuff could we make? And and Warner Brothers always had the cool Saul Bass logo too, right? Or the Warner Records.
Yeah. Warner Music Group logo. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that came out of the film world, like somewhere in the mid '80s, I think, or late '80s. They went back to the old Shield when which is a long story there, but Warner Brothers had obviously at one time been affiliated with the film company, and they're not any longer, and it was some weird arrangement they had. Is it a complete separate group? Warner Music is different than Time Warner, AOL. That's separate.
It
worlds.
Is now. Yeah,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think in 2000 or something like that, they'd sold off to the music division to AOL.
Okay.
And then, so at this point, it was, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we officially had to give up the Shield logo at Warner, and we're not Warner Brothers Records anymore. We're Warner Records, and so kind of to rebrand it.
Got it. And is that still under the AOL, or no? There's a different AOL Warner Brothers Records. No, So is there a Warner Brothers Records or Warner Brothers Music? Nothing. It's all there. Wow.
Nope. The brothers are gone. Brothers have left the building.
Well, that happened many, many decades ago. But that's amazing. I have this great book I've been eking my way through called what is it? It's an oral history of early Hollywood. Why am I spacing on the name of it? It's incredible, but it has a chapter for kind of each of the big labels, or each of the big heads. And there's a Warner Brothers one, and it's just debaucherous. It's
you'll have to tell me that when you remember.
Why am I missing? It's funny too, because I want to say, like, it's how the West was something, but it's fascinating. It opens with Sinclair Oil and the Teapot Dome scandal, and this sort of like that's where I got it. So it was referred to as sort of the true story of There Will Be Blood, sort of the Daniel Plainview, sort of like the real oil man kind of story, and getting into the Sinclair Oil Group and all the money and all the stuff that was spent and all the corruption there. And then then the next chapters, the Jack Warner and the house he built for his mistress, and the son and the cousin and the thing, and it's all told oral, these kind of oral history things. So they're really easy reads, but I think I now have the young children. I have the reading habits of a father of young children, right? I get about 5 minutes a night to reread the same opening pages, the same 2 pages for the last 6 months.
I hear you.
But it's fascinating. That's so cool. Well, we should wrap it up here. Where do people find you if they want to know more about what you're doing artistically and records, and if they want to buy anything, where can they do that?
Yeah, everything's up on my website, devinsarno.com. And you'll find it all there.
And you have a very active Bandcamp page as well. I follow you, and I always get you're so good at keeping up.
Yeah, pretty much everything's up there too.
Great. Yeah. So devinsarno.com, and then you can find a link to Bandcamp where you can download all kinds of great music. You have an incredible archivist sense too. Whenever we play live shows together, you always have a recorder going, and that always gets put up in some way or form, right? Or a lot of times.
Yeah, I try to remember to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Again, just kind of archiving it show by show.
Exactly.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. Well, Devin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and telling your story.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it.
Right. I'm going to ask my mom if we're to go back in the family archives and figure out, maybe we get the same nose. We have the Roman profile. I'll start.
My brother. I knew it.
Paisano. Oh, it's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Devin. I appreciate it. Hell yeah. Devin Sarno rules. Thank you, Devin, so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody dug that conversation. Yeah, it was great to talk about, his day job too, being a music video commissioner of music videos for all these crazy major label celebrity bands, all the while, financing his own epic catalog output of noise rock and keeping, the torch burning for LA underground music. Yeah, it's kind of like Batman, but of noise, ambient bass, or experimental bass music, experimental bass man. I don't know if that works as well, but you get the idea. All right. Well, thank you for listening again. Go check out devinsarno.com. You can also check out devin-sarno.bandcamp.com. And he's always got new stuff coming up. If you're in the LA area and you want to see him play live, go check out his Instagram. He's always posting new shows and flyers with his collaboration that he's working on now. I think his most active collaboration, A&D. And yeah, that was a fun one. I really love Devin, man. He's a good dude. I'm sure, as you could tell from the conversation. So I will see you on the next one. I'll be back here with Farley talking shit, not paying attention. It all depends if we've noticed if we record late at night, they're usually much more conspiracy filled and punchy. And then if they're in the morning, if Farley and I record in the morning, it's a very kind of quiet and sort of somber, like just waking up, kind of rubbing the sleep out of our eyes. So I don't know if we can really pull off a middle of the day record for these half times. Usually it's gotta be on one extreme side or the other, but it's fun because it switches it up, keeps you on your toes. All right. See you then.
Brothers have left the building.